Only days after the Bondi Junction stabbing in Sydney, Australia, the attack of the Assyrian Bishop Marmari should raise the alarm bells for every Australian citizen, regardless of their ethnicity, creed or religion, or ideological affiliations. The aftermath of the Bondi knife attack is still so fresh in the psyche of the populace. The impact still being felt on both the innocent victims and their families, and the Australian public, which was again being subjected to what could be construed as an anti-masculinity drive by the mainstream media. It would seem the people are now being twisted and contorted by the multiple layers and agendas of the latest attack. In the case of the pen attack of Bishop Marmari, a 16-year-old Muslim assailant was allegedly shouting the capture all Arabic words Allahu Akbar, meaning God is great, as he stabbed his victim multiple times. The mere mention of these words seemingly handing authority to New South Wales Police and the Australian Federal Police to charge the young assailant with terrorism. It should be noted that Bishop Marmari Emmanuel's Christian congregation are all Arabic speakers who use these very words to praise their Lord. This isn't a Muslim or Christian thing. This is an Arabic thing. And the suburb in the west of Sydney is one where the Arab population live together. Inspection of the video showing the attack, which can only be viewed in Australia through platforms such as Alex Jones, reveals that in all likelihood the words Allahu Akbar were never used. The family of the young perpetrator revealed the assailant suffers from complex mental issues and is quoted as suggesting that he has no capacity for radicalization. The charge of terrorism, in line with the Crimes Act, remained, however. The question of why might soon be revealed. The question of how is a simpler equation. In times of upheaval or horror or murder or tragedy, it might be a truism that authorities must act. However, on reflection, when the dust settles, are we the people being asked to look the other way? Is there a time to ask real questions or to decide what is relevant or material? It is no surprise that it has been revealed that the New South Wales government has committed to an $18 million inquest. What does that mean, though? Is this event again being used to further centralize powers, again under the purported agenda of making us feel safe? What is the real cost of the illusion of safety? In this case, the people will be furnished with increased surveillance, more protections, and increased control of information and images. It is worth noting that the Digital ID Bill passed April 2024, but does the government still need to seek and find these incidents to garner support? Does the government need to have the public on their side? Is this yet another example of manufactured consent and lawfare? Or is the government simply responding to the will of the people? Turning to the events after the attack on the bishop, thousands of men from the Christian Assyrian community gathered outside the hospital emergency, enraged. Little did these men realize that the New South Wales police force, who also gathered in numbers, switched on their cameras and profiled every single one of the boys and men, who are all of Middle Eastern heritage. Those cameras are more than capable of digitally identifying and recognizing the angry men from that night. Those who have been listening to Bishop Marmari's sermons in person or on YouTube and other social media platforms, where he has gathered millions of followers, would be aware that this was one of the main issues that he had been trying to warn his listeners about, not to mention the implementation of a digital currency. Is the bishop a conspiracy theorist? Are the government using top-down control, utilizing the framework of problem, reaction, solution to their advantage? In the wake of the attempted stabbing of the bishop, the response has been far more reaching than we might expect. The attack on Bishop Marmari was being streamed live on social media, and soon afterwards spread through reposting of the footage, most notably on the social media platform formerly known as Twitter, the Musk-owned X. This is where the significance of the classification by the NSW State Police of the pen attack as a terrorist attack takes most effect. As the footage that had been streamed and now reposted on social media contained footage of a crime that it was alleged was of a terrorist nature, powers were conferred on the E-Safety Commissioner of Australia to censor the content because of its designation. An Australian federal court order was granted to the Commonwealth to effectively ban the material. Since this time, we have seen the issue escalate, where the Prime Minister of Australia, Mr. Anthony Albanese, called out, Elon Musk as an arrogant billionaire, in Musk's failure to adhere to the court order, which took the form of an injunction that has now been extended. Musk has not remained silent either. It has been noted by some in legal circles that the matter could be challenged on the basis of the merits of the case, given that films involving terrorism are rarely censored, and footage from the Bondi knife attack was free to be distributed. However, this perhaps misses the mark. Paralleling the situation that unfolded during the COVID pandemic, tennis great Novak Djokovic was deported from Australia in the exercise of executive power that on its face was beyond the rule of law and Australia's constitution. In that case, the minister in question made a decision based on opinion and not on law. In the current matter, it is noted that the power of the E-Safety Commission, or Commissar as labeled by Musk, is based on the classification of the filmed footage as an act of terrorism. However, this is merely an allegation and the suspect has not been convicted of terrorism. The question therefore remains, whilst unlikely to be challenged, as to whether the executive branch can exercise a power based on presumption without a conviction of the charge that would serve as facts in evidence. Is this a further erosion of the rule of law? If so, why are the legal fraternity not raising such matters? As was witnessed during COVID, the public were totally disoriented and no longer valued their independence. Here too, it is not difficult to find justification for laws diametrically opposed to free speech, bodily autonomy, and in this case, freedom of the press. The key is to appeal to the so-called common good. Wear a mask, not for your protection, but for others. The same with vaccines. Did COVID lay the template for all such otherwise intolerably oppressive measures now being instituted? Hence, the New South Wales Police Force has proclaimed itself as the sole source of information on the topic of the church knife attack. How so? On grounds that the sharing of unauthorized information on the subject potentially fuels discrimination of a minority group, specifically people of Islam and Arab descent. Is the reasoning of the government superfluous? Is it conceivable that in fact, the weaker the reasoning, the more helpless in the face of power one feels, since reason at least grants one a sense that they too might enact such laws if they were in power? And once a dictatorship is well established, any pretense of reasoning is abandoned so as to make the reality of absolute power inescapable. We do it for the illusion of safety. We do it because we can. Typically, there is great reluctance to label such an event, by a Muslim, as terror-related, for to do so might spark public discrimination. And in this particular case, there would seem every reason for the New South Wales Police to pause on making such a statement, given that the attacker himself had no specific affiliation with a terrorist organization, and moreover was well within juvenile age at 16 years. Yet the label was granted almost immediately following the attack. Could it be because only a so-called terrorist incident grants the Australian government powers to enact broad censorship laws upon its populace, and in so doing outlaw those, such as Elon Musk, who allow for such content to be accessed and shared across his platform? Another further corollary of the incident can be observed. In the aftermath of the pen attack on the bishop, police arrested 5 people during a major counter-terrorism operation in Sydney, involving more than 400 New South Wales police and federal police officers. The foundation of the issues of censorship, the digital ID bill, and counter-terrorism that have stemmed from the attack on the Assyrian bishop is the appeal to measures reasonably necessary for public safety. There is little doubt, then, that the attack on a religious figure substantiates what would otherwise be construed as a heavy-handed and unnecessary response by trigger-happy authorities. In other circumstances, targeting of Muslim boys and men would be seen as racist profiling. Wouldn't it? Benjamin Franklin once said, "Those who would give up essential liberty to purchase a little temporary safety deserve neither liberty nor safety." In this case, like many before it, and undoubtedly many in the future, is our consent void considering the disorientation our culture is in? Is the centralization of power and the granting of authority derived from informed consent? Has consent been manufactured at every turn? Or are the government merely acting on our collective best interests?